Welcome back and Shabbat Shalom, family. We're going to continue our Bible study in the prophecies of Daniel. And of course, as I said, these prophecies are extremely important because they're not only showing what happened in the past, they're showing where we are right now, and they're showing, of course, what's about to happen. Now, as we look in the book of Revelation, for example, many people make the mistake of thinking that you could just read from Revelation 1 to 22 and pretty much get a chronological order of what's happening. And no, you can't. Some of it is chronological. For example, the seven churches, the seven seals, and the seven trumpets are indeed chronological and they move together. What most people don't realize is that they do move together. See, so there are things in the Bible that are not as clear as somebody that just reads a book can see. That is why I always say to you, please read your Bible and read it with the guidance of the Spirit of your Father. Always ask. This is a supernatural undertaking. You are not reading the Bible as you would read a chemistry book, or that as you would read a novel, or as you would read any history book. No, you must read this book with the Spirit of the eternal God guiding you. Otherwise, you won't understand it. Okay. And if you decide that you're just going to read part of it and think you're going to be able to interpret it, you're in a world of trouble. For those of us that are called to receive the truths of this book, the message, of course, it tells us is given to his Yah's servants. We must read the whole book. We must ask for his guidance and wisdom in having to read it. So that, for example, you're reading the book of Revelation and you read the seven churches, seals, and trumpets, you understand we are in the sixes of all of that. Okay. The first five of each of them are already done. We're in the sixth one, the sixth church, the sixth trumpet, and the sixth seal. That's where we are. And the call is being made to individuals that will be in the seventh seal, which is soon to come upon us. Okay. Beginning, as I believe, in 2027, just a few years away. Okay. And so all of these things are coming to pass, and you're watching this and you're seeing. So, like in Revelation chapter 17, the events of Revelation chapter 17 mostly take place prior to Revelation chapter 13. And I can show you that. But if you're just reading it, you won't understand that. The events of Revelation chapter 15 and 16 take place after Revelation 17 and 18. See, so there's but you would only know that if the Father's Spirit is guiding you and as you have read the whole book. I've heard somebody say, well, I don't think we're in chapter 3 of Revelation yet in history. And when I hear that, I'll be like, okay. And let me tell you something, man. Nobody in a Christian church will ever understand the book of Revelation. The closest church I saw get to it was the SDA church, and even they are blinded to what's really going on there. If you listen to some of the things they say, they're completely blinded to what's going on. They have a clear, like it's almost like they're looking through a glass and it's dark and they're trying to murk through it. And they're the closest ones. Nobody else is even in the vicinity. And SDA church is far from understanding it, and they never will. Why? Because look, let's review this. The book of Revelation, it starts off the revelation of Jesus Christ, which Yah gave unto him to show unto his servants things that must shortly come to pass. So the book is not for everybody. It also reveals that the servants are the Hebrew Israelites. 12 tribes of Israel are the servants. Okay. So unless you understand from the Bible who those servants are, You won't understand it. Not only that, let's just remember certain things. The children of Israel, okay? Listen carefully what I'm about to say, because it's going to blow some people away. Not all of y'all. Some of y'all are going to be reading your Bible already and you understand what I'm about to say. But for somebody that's listening to me the first time, it's going to blow you away. The Hebrew Israelites of the Bible are the only people that were named and called by the Father. Abraham was given that name from his father. But the Father Yah said, your name is not Abraham anymore. Your name is Abraham, because I have made you the father of nations. And then later he told Abraham and his wife, who he named from Sarai to Sarah, he said, you're going to have a son, and his name is going to be Isaac, or Yesha'ak, to laugh. So Father called and named Abraham. He called and named Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham's son Yesha'ak had two sons, Edom and Jacob. And they were told that the elder shall serve the younger, but Yesha'ak had his intent on giving his blessing, his double blessing on Esau. Didn't happen, number one. Number two, when Jacob stole it, later on, when he repented, Father sent Messiah to tell him, your name is no longer Jacob. Your name is Yashar'al, to be right with the Most High, or Israel. And I'm going to make you a great nation. So now you have three individuals. Abraham, who is now changed to Abraham. Yasha'ak, who was called before he was even conceived. And then you have Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. And then you have Jacob's children, which is the nation of the children of Israel. No other nation in the planet's history has been called like that. Zero. Called by Father Yah, named by Father Yah, prophecy to exist into the end, into the kingdom by Father Yah. Nobody, no other nation. You can't tell me of any other nation that has been called like that. Okay? No other nation. So, if you have a called people, and I mean literally called forth, named and called by the Creator, any people that's named and called by man must fail. Did you hear what I said? Any people that's named and called by man must fail. So if you're in a Christian denomination called Baptist, Father never called a denomination forth and said you're going to be named Baptist. Or SDA or Mormon, Father never called any of them into existence and named them. Never. How do I know that? Never did it. Okay? The Jehovah's Witnesses will say, well, we're Jehovah's Witnesses. He never called y'all because he only called Hebrew Israelites, and he said, you are my witnesses. So any man-made religion, denomination must fall. It will not last. It will not last. It will fall. And only that which was called forth by the Father will go forward. Okay? And that's why I say, pray to your Father. Ask him for his spirit. He named the chosen people. He knows what he's saying. Of course, he knows the beginning from the end. He knows the whole thing. He will guide you. And as we're reading Daniel, this connects in a special way with the book of Revelation. And we're going to show you, it connects in a special way with the book of Revelation. And because of that connection, it helped unlock prophecies from all the other Hebrew Israelite prophets. And so that's why this study of Daniel is so important. Now, as we already studied, we saw that Daniel now has shown us the four kingdoms, and Zechariah has bore witness that these four kingdoms are specifically brought into the attention of the word of the Most High, because they have each of them been involved in the scattering of Israel and Judah. Okay, they've each been involved. Now, the Assyrians were the ones that scattered the northern tribes. But if you read the Bible, you will understand that the Assyrians and the Babylonians are pretty much occupy the same land. They were all under the Babylonian umbrella, but the Assyrians are part of that. They're in Nimrod's territory, but they were Semites. So they're counted under Babylon, understand? And when Nebuchadnezzar ruled, he ruled over the Assyrians too. So it's Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Those are the four powers that have scattered Israel and Judah, who are the only chosen people of Father Yah in the entire history of planet Earth. Only people ever called and named by Father Yah. And then we read in the book of Deuteronomy how he set bounds for Israel at the foundation of the earth. When the earth was being created by the Father, he had in his mind set bounds and foundations for this chosen area that were going to be for his chosen people who he knew, foreknew. The Bible says he foreknew us. Nothing is by accident. Nothing is happenstance with the Father, especially in things of this nature. Okay. Now, with that in mind, we're going to talk about a phrase that is thousands of years old, that in all cultures, they have used this phrase. That is, the writing is on the wall. Okay, the writing is on the wall. And what does it mean in general terms? It means like I can see something forming before it happens, because all of the circumstances around it are taking place. So, for example, when they said to me just 2 weeks ago, listen, we're going to give you a week to get your act together, and then we're going to have another conversation. I saw what? The writing on the wall. I'm getting ready to lose this job. And a lot of people, like, I remember when I was a young man and I was working at Chase Manhattan Bank on Water Street in Manhattan. Some of y'all who know Manhattan know it's near the Brooklyn Bridge. It's down there near the South Ferry, where the ferry comes from Staten Island. And I was right down there at that time. I don't know if it's still there, but Chase Manhattan had a giant bank building down there and on Water Street. And when I was working there, I was working in a department, and we were doing what they call reconciliation. And next to our department was the computer room. Okay. And I was only there for about, I think, 3 years. I was there. I started there. I was 20 years old, I think, when I started there. I was only there for about 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And I noticed during that time, there was a wall that separated the computer room from our office. And the computer room at that time, I don't know if they do it this way. No, probably not. But they had all their computers for the whole bank in there, and the room had to be kept cold for the computers, especially in the summertime. They had to really crank up the cold in that room to keep the computers from breaking down. This was back in the day. So, but what I noticed, though, was that they kept knocking down the wall and making our department smaller, and the wall kept moving over. And I was like, oh, shoot, eventually, they won't need our department. I mean, anybody could see it. The wall just kept moving. You know, they kept redoing it, and our room was getting smaller, and the computer room was getting bigger. So I saw the writing on the wall. I knew eventually they would need us. Okay. And that's what I'm saying. You could see, like, again, a few years ago, I'm managing a bank in Washington, D.C., and the upper management wanted us all to see the most technologically advanced branch they had. It was in Atlanta, and they just built it, and they wanted us to see it. And in the branch, there was no tellers. Everything was on a screen. There was only like 2 or 3 people working in the branch, because everything was done on a screen. You could walk into the branch and you can do all your business on a screen. You could talk to a person, but you're going to be on a screen. And it was so technologically advanced. I said to my, the next morning we had our team meeting we had every morning. I said, did y'all see what I saw yesterday? And they said, oh, isn't something? I said, no, what it means is in a few years, they're not going to need any of us because everything's going to be automated. They won't need you. And I said, start to look for other careers. Go to school, do what you need to do. And even myself, I started going to school for IT at that time. I said, start to do something else. Because in a few years, if you're dependent on retiring in this position, you're not going to be able to retire because they're not going to need you. I saw the writing on the wall. Okay. And that's where we get this term. It comes from Daniel chapter 5, the writing on the wall. Only thing is when you read it in Daniel 5, you really get the most accurate sense of what it means. Okay, you really get the most accurate sense. And there's something in regard to why I was mentioning the order of prophecy is that when you get to Daniel chapter 5, what you will see is that Daniel chapter 5, we're going to see Belshazzar, who is Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, and I'll tell you about that. They say son, but the translation is really grandson, and I'll show you why. But you're going to see his grandson be killed, be murdered in Daniel chapter 5. Now, in Daniel chapter 7 and 8, you see his grandson again, but it's because Daniel 7 and Daniel 8 took place prior to Daniel 5. Okay, so I'll show you. Let's take a look in Daniel chapter 7. We're gonna read just the beginning of it so you can see the time frame we're talking about. Daniel chapter 5. And in Daniel 6, you see Darius. Okay, so it's almost confusing a little bit, but you got to understand there's an order. It's just not the chronological order that the chapters are in. Okay, so let's take a look in Daniel chapter 7, and let's read verse 1, just verse 1 of Daniel chapter 7. Notice what it says here. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. So in Daniel chapter 7, verse 1, one of the things we understand is that this dream, this vision that Daniel had took place in Belshazzar's first year as king. Okay, so you understand where it says in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. So he had this vision, this dream, whatever you're going to read in the rest of chapter 7, it took place in Belshazzar's first year as king. Then when you look at Daniel chapter 8 and verse 1, notice what it says in Daniel chapter 8 and verse 1. In the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. So now you can see in Daniel chapter 7, Belshazzar's first year as king, everything took place in the vision. The vision took place that Daniel received. And then in Belshazzar's third year as king, what you see in chapter 8 took place in terms of the vision and the interpretation. So that these two chapters actually took place prior to what you see in Daniel chapter 5. Okay, see, so it's not always chronological the way the Bible goes, but you understand now why I just showed you that those two things you could see based on their time frame that they were referenced, Belshazzar's first year, Belshazzar's third year, that they took place obviously before he was murdered, right? Which he was murdered in chapter 5. He was killed in chapter 5. Now, let's go to 2 Kings, the last chapter of 2 Kings. 2 Kings. So we know that it was Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel told us that he destroyed Jerusalem and that he took Judah captive. Okay. But in 2 Kings chapter 25, 2 Kings chapter 25, it tells us about Nebuchadnezzar's son. Okay, so let's start in 2 Kings chapter 25, 2 Kings chapter 25. We're going to just read verse 1. 2 Kings chapter 25, let's read verse 1 just to confirm what I just said. 2 Kings chapter 25 and verse 1. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came he and all his hosts against Jerusalem and pitched against it, and they built forts against it round about. See, and so that's when he started to destroy Jerusalem. It was a process, but he started pitching forts. He made forts around it, and they started to attack the city of Jerusalem. That was Nebuchadnezzar. It tells us it was in the 9th year of his reign. But then that happened. We know they were carried away captive. And let's say, going to start at verse 22. Let's go to the same chapter, 2 Kings chapter 25. Let's start at verse 22, and we'll go from verse 22 down to verse 30 so we can see the succession here. So 2 Kings chapter 25 from verse 22 to verse 30. And as for the people that remained in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king had left, even over them he made Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, ruler. And when all the captains of the armies, they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had made Gedaliah governor, there came to Gedaliah to Mizpah even Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, and Yachanan, which is John, the son of Kareah, and to Shariah, the son of Tahumath, the Netophanite, and Yaazaniah, the son of a Maakathite, they and their men. And Gedaliah swore to them and to their men, and said to them, fear not to be servants to the Chaldees. Dwell in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be well with you. That's what Jeremiah had been telling them, but they weren't listening. But it came to pass in the 7th month that Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, the son of Elishama of the seed royal, came, and 10 men with him, and smote Gedaliah. It was going to be bad anyway. That he died, and the Jews and the Chaldees that were with him in Mizpah, and all the people, both small and great, and the captains of the armies, arose and came to Egypt. We always like to go to Egypt. If anybody ever doubted what the true Hebrews look like, you just got to read the Bible, and you see every chance they got, they were going to Egypt. Okay, Egypt is Africa. So they kept going to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldees. Verse 27. And it came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity. That is, they had been in captivity 37 years. It came to pass in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, that Evil-Merodach, king of Babylon. See, that was Nebuchadnezzar's son. Evil-Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, did lift up the head of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, out of prison. And he spake kindly to him, and set his throne above the throne of the kings that were with him in Babylon, and changed his prison garments. And he did eat bread continually before him all the days of his life. And his allowance was a continual allowance given him of the king, a daily rate for every day, all the days of his life. So at some point after Nebuchadnezzar's death, the first year of his son's reign, he lifted up Judah's king that they had taken captive and put in jail, and made him and treated him well. Probably because he repented, number one, and probably number two, because of the witness that was born to Nebuchadnezzar, his father. Okay, so he lifted, that was Evil-Merodach. Then after Evil-Merodach came Belshazzar. Okay, after Evil-Merodach came Belshazzar. And here we are with Belshazzar in Daniel chapter 5. Okay, Daniel chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. Daniel chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. So just remember, at this time, by the time chapter 5 was written, Daniel had already received the visions that we're going to read later of chapter 7 and 8. His father was Evil-Merodach, his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had repented and become a believer in Yah, and his son treated the king of Judah that he had in jail like one of the kings after that. And here comes Belshazzar. Daniel chapter 5, verse 1. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before the 1,000. So he was having a party. Okay, he's having a party. No problem with the party, but no problem. Verse 2. Belshazzar, while he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which is in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes and his concubines, his wives and his concubines, might drink therein. This is where he messed up. This is where he crossed the line. So he was having a party. No problem. But he starts to now bring the holy vessels taken out of the temple in Jerusalem that Solomon had made. He brings these vessels and he brings them to the party, not to worship, but to party with the holy vessels. And he would have known better because of his grandfather, what happened to his grandfather, as Daniel's going to reference, and his father. He would have known better. But he was a king and he had power. And remember, we cannot handle power. So he got arrogant with his power and he had the nerve to say, hey, go get that gold, those beautiful gold and silver cups that my father took from Jerusalem. Bring them in here that we can party and we can put our wine in here and drink. That's where he messed up. He was doing all right until then. But his pride and arrogance went too far. And this wouldn't have been his first offense. As you all and I know, when we start getting proud and arrogant, it's not the moment we start getting proud and arrogant that we face the consequences. It's over time. Father give you a little rope. And usually the pride and the arrogance is enough rope for us to what? Hang ourselves. And this is Belshazzar. Verse 3. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of Yah, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines drank in them. Golden vessels that were supposed to be used only by the Levite priests. They brought into Babylon. Okay, that's part of our punishment. But then you're going to try to use them in your party? Verse 4. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver and of brass, of iron, of wood and stone. So they praised not the Father Yah. They took his vessels and praised other gods. Now, wait a minute. They took Father's vessels and praised other gods. He called for Father's vessels to his party. And now look, question, y'all. Here's a question, little riddle for you. Ready? What are Father's vessels today? What are Father's vessels now? Is there any cups or silver vessels or any ark or what? Yeah, that's right, Ark of Wambanya. We are his vessels. We are his vessels. And as Belshazzar called forth Father's vessels, holy vessels, to bring into his worldly worship, the mark of the beast has to do with us being called, Father's vessels being called into Babylonian worship. You see that? And when that happened, it was over. And as we had said, that wouldn't have been the first instance of Belshazzar being arrogant, but that was certainly the one that crossed the line. Just so, with the image to the beast and the false prophet that's here right now, when they start to try to bring Yah's holy vessels, because brethren, that's what we're doing. What are we doing right now? We are being sanctified. That means set apart by the Father's Spirit for his service, for his glory. We are dedicating ourselves to his word, to obedience, to repentance where our fathers fell. We're going back. That makes us his holy vessels. That's why he said, don't let go of the winds until we have sealed the service. That is, sealing us in perfection of righteousness and holiness. So the problem will come for Babylon in today when they try to drag us in their party with their music and their worship and try to tell us we're going to kill y'all if you don't submit. You don't cross the line right there. That's why the word is given in Revelation chapter 14. Babylon, it says it twice. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. See, it don't matter when they doing it with heathen. That's their business. But when you dealing with Israel, that's Father's business. Because Israel is still, was, and always will be the apple of Father Yahweh's eye. Always. Especially when we are in a repentant state. When we are in a repentant state, as we are now, because we're being called back to the Father, you don't mess with us. You can do what you want in Babylon. You can create all the banking systems and do all the recessions you want. You can create all the billionaires you want, but don't get us involved when we are trying to serve our God, because now you're going to have a problem. Belshazzar knows all about it. Or should I say, he knew all about it because he's dead now. But let's take a look. Daniel chapter 5. Verse 5, in the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. So now, by this time, when he saw that writing, judgment had already been pronounced. As Daniel's going to show him, the judgment was already pronounced. That's why I say to you, it's not about a judgment on this complete Babylon we're in right now. Is not like a judgment that needs to be pronounced. In the modern Babylon in which we live, judgment has already been pronounced. It's over. They just don't know it yet. See, when he called for the holy vessels, it was over. It was over for him. He just didn't know it yet. And he still didn't even believe it after Daniel told him what was going to happen. But it was over already. The judgment had been pronounced. It was just now being shown to him. Brethren, let me tell you something. The judgment is already pronounced. It's already happening. Everything is already in motion that Father Yah has placed in motion. It's just a matter of it all playing out. It's already been called. Okay, it's already been called. And the people that are going to respond to the 144,000's message are already preordained by the Father to receive that message. Already preordained by the Father. And we have been preordained to make the message, to give the message. But it's already been pronounced. There's no saving this empire. There's no coming back. There's no repentance. There's no saving it. It's going. Okay. It's just a question of what role will you and I play within it. Are we going to be playing the role of servants of Father Yah or not? Really, that's what it comes down to for us. Because it's already decided. In Daniel chapter 5, verse 6. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another. The joints of his loins were loosed. You know what that means. He peed on himself. He was so scared when he saw what he saw. A doom came over him, and he peed on himself. You know, people get really scared, little kids especially, they pee on themselves. Remember the first time I played football? And I was catching a kickoff. That's what I did. I was about 10 or 11 years old. I was scared. I heard all them feet running toward me. Yeah, I was scared. But what happened when you're scared? That's what happened. See? And so he was scared and he peed on himself as he saw the writing on the wall. And his knees smote one against another. He was very scared here. Verse 7, the king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. So he calls his crew, his magicians, astrologers, tarot card readers, palm readers, blah, 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 and says, tell me what this means, and I'm going to make you third ruler in the kingdom. Then came in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Why? Because the writing came from Father Yah. Therefore, let me ask you all a question. If the writing came from Father Yah and it was given to a heathen to tell him his doom, and they couldn't read it, what was he going to have to do? The only way he was going to get the interpretation of that writing was to call a Hebrew Israelite. He wasn't going to understand it except he called a Hebrew. And brethren, let me tell you something. Revelation, Daniel, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, to the heathen, they're just like the writing on the wall. They don't know what they're reading. Unless they get one who was called to read it, the Hebrew Israelite. So, and he had to be convinced. This is how dumb this man was. He had to be convinced from from the queen. Let's take a look. Daniel chapter 5, verse 9. So his boys couldn't tell him nothing. So now, then was King Belshazzar greatly troubled. See, there was a pall of darkness. He knew something bad was coming. He peed on himself. He knew this was scary. He actually saw the hand writing on the wall. He said, this is bad, man. I don't know what it is, but it's bad. Okay? Then was Belshazzar greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed at him, and his lords were astonished. Now the queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. And the queen spake and said, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, nor let thy countenance be changed. There is a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him, whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. For as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. See, now they're calling him Daniel, because the grandfather Nebuchadnezzar and the father Evil Merodach recognized the God of the Israelites was the true God. And so they had passed that down, and even the queen understood. Daniel's the master of the magicians. Daniel is the one that your father had named Belteshazzar, but his name is Daniel, a Hebrew Israelite from Judah. He can do this. Verse 13. Now, this is where we must recognize that as Daniel is walking into the palace that night, the things that were shown to him in chapter 7 and 8, he was already known. He was already knowledgeable of. Okay, so when he's walking into the palace to see this writing on the wall, he kind of already knows what's up, because he was already shown what we will see in Daniel chapter 7 and in Daniel chapter 8. He had already seen that by the time he walks into the palace here. So he's not surprised by anything he sees here. Okay, Daniel chapter 5, verse 13. Then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake and said unto Daniel, Art thou that Daniel, which art of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Jewry? I have heard of thee, that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom is found in thee. And now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read the writing and make known unto me the interpretation thereof, but they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And I have heard of thee that thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now, if thou canst read the writing and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. Daniel wasn't even worried about any of that stuff as he's about to say. Why? Because he knew that this was the end of Babylon. See, this was the end of Babylon. He knew that this spelled doom for Babylon, and he also knew who was coming next. Now, the main river at that time for Babylon was the river Euphrates. Historically speaking, when the kingdoms that were coming against Babylon that night, that overthrew Babylon and killed Belshazzar, they put rocks into the river so that they can cross. They dried up part of the river that caused them to come into the main city. They dried up part of the river because it was the end of Babylon. Let me show you something. Keep your finger there. We'll come right back to Daniel 5. But let's take a look at Revelation chapter 16 in the 6th plague. Revelation chapter 16, the 6th plague. Revelation chapter 16 and verse 12. Revelation 16 and verse 12. Let's compare. Revelation chapter 16 and verse 12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. So the Euphrates was the main river of Babylon, and it was dried up because kings were coming across. Now, in Daniel, kings came across for what purpose? To destroy Babylon. That was ancient Babylon. And now in Revelation 16, when we are on the Sea of Glass, the plague is coming that's going to destroy modern Babylon. So that's what the sixth plague is about. It's about the prelude to the destruction of the entire system and the end of this age. And they use Euphrates as a sign. Okay? We'll come back to that. But let's go to Daniel chapter 5 again. Daniel chapter 5, verse 17. Daniel chapter 5, verse 17. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, let thy gifts be to thyself. He knows what's up. And let thy gifts be to thyself and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king and make known to him the interpretation. O thou king, the most high Father Yah gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor. And for the majesty that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he slew, and whom he would, he kept alive. Whom he would, he set up, and whom he would, he put down. But when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride, he was deposed of his kingly throne, and they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High Yah ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointeth over it whomsoever he will. And thou, his son, O Belteshazzar, hast not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this, but hast lifted up thyself against the master of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee. Thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass and iron and wood and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and the Most High, in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, thou hast not glorified. Verse 24. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, Takal, Uparsim. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, Yah hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Taka, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Paras, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So at age 62, Darius became king of what was Babylon and was divided between the Medes and the Persians. The succession of kingdoms which we saw, divided between the Medes and the Persians. How did Daniel know that? Because as we're going to read, it was shown him in chapter 8. But Daniel already knew that again when he walked in that night, that the Medes and the Persians were coming next. He already knew that. And he knew that the Greeks were coming after that. Okay, so he knew those things were coming by the time he walked in there on that fateful night. That was Belshazzar's last night alive on planet Earth. Okay, so that is the writing on the wall. So generally, when you really see the interpretation of the writing on the wall, what it means is judgment has come. What it means is something has already been determined from the Most High, and there's nothing nobody could do to stop it. What it means is he's talked to you for the last time, and it's over. So I say to you, in modern Babylon, in the age in which we now live, the writing is on the wall. It's already over. The question is, who from among the chosen ones of both the bloodline and the heathen, who from amongst the chosen one is going to be standing on that sea of glass? Because we're only a few years from it. We're in the sixes right now. And then it comes the sevens. The 3.5 years will come starting in 2027. The 3.5 years will come and things are going to happen, brethren. And we're going to be preaching and teaching with the Father's Spirit clothed in sackcloth and ashes because we're going to be under attack. But Father is now preparing us in 2023 for what is soon to come. He's preparing us. And may he continue to prepare you and me to be ready against that time, because the word is going to come to pass. Nothing will stop Father's word. Nothing can. See, don't worry about what man is saying about the economy and what he's saying about wars and what he's saying about the environment. Don't worry about that. Father has all things in time itself in his own hands. And there's nobody else that can do anything else about that. Okay? We just need to trust our Father. Okay? Praise the Most High. So the next we're going to get an interlude and look at Darius's kingdom, which is the kingdom of the Medes. You see, the Medes and the Persians ruled together, but the Medes were on the throne first, even though they ruled together. Later on, the Persians came, and we'll talk about that in Daniel chapter 6. But another trial is coming to Daniel over worship. Okay, another trial is coming over worship. We've seen this twice already. That'll be the second time in Daniel we saw that. We saw it in Daniel chapter 3, and we're going to see it in Daniel 6. A trial coming on the Hebrew Israelites revolving around the area of who you worship. That's the mark of the beast. See, it's not a literal mark on your hand or your forehead. It's about who you worship. And that's going to be the key here. And the 3 Abrahamic religions are going to be all in. That's no problem. They're part of it. They're part of the fabric. But the true Hebrews are going to be pointed out because of who you worship and who you're not worshiping. That's going to be a key. So here in Daniel chapter 6, we're going to see more of that, more of a trial based on who we worship. Okay, it's going to come down to that. Always will, brethren, because the war is between Satan and the Most High. And the Most High is being represented by his captain, Yahweh Shah. And so the war rages on. May the Most High bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom.